Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of Rainer on Leadership, a podcast for church leaders or leadership within any environment. My name is Josh.
My name is Sam, and Josh, I just want you to know that I like you.
Thank you.
I really,
Appreciate that.
I don't
like
know
you.
if you're seeking my approval, if you desire my approval, but you have it.
Well, I like you too. I'm not sure why you're telling me that, but
Because it's the subject of the podcast. Did you not look in the notes, like off to the side, where I just copied and pasted them?
oh yeah, I saw all those words, and I figured I'd read them while you were talking.
And this is what I love about this podcast is we do have a little bit of a plan. There is a little bit of a plan before, but we don't ever discuss it. We just roll right into it. And we do have a surprise guest. I didn't even realize that he was going to show up, but somehow he got the recording link and has popped into our recording studio. So I certainly want to welcome Marty Duren.
It's good to be here.
Marty,
I actually did. I read those notes when you put them in there, so I knew why you were buttering Josh up.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
good.
Well, it's a good thing we like Marty. We'll keep him around a little bit.
So Marty and I have a long history, most of it good.
Yep.
And he is going to be doing some content creation for Church Answers, particularly on the writing side. He is a writer that I greatly respect and owns a literary company, 610 Media.
Yeah, it's like a publishing, editing. I work with words, basically, help people get their words out.
So you also want to pick up his new book. We're going to be promoting that today, The Disparate Ones, Essays on Being in the World but Not of the World. It's actually a really good book. So we'll put a link in the show notes to the book. I encourage you to go pick it up. Look him up on 610 Media as well. Yeah, there we go. There's a copy of it. So you can go check it out on Amazon. That the best way to get it, Marty?
It's available, I think, anywhere it can be ordered online. So any bookstore,
cool.
Books A Million, Tertulia Bookshop, Powell's. I mean, everywhere that I've looked that is like an online retailer, it's available.
Nice.
Awesome. Hey, we are going to be talking about seeking approval and why that's usually not a good thing when it comes to your church. Marty's going to be helping us out with that as well. But before we get into the content of the show, I want to thank our sponsor, the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. They have a lot of great programs, and they are known for being a theological leader. I don't think anybody's going to deny that about Southern Seminary. But they got some practical solutions as well. So yes, academic, but also focusing on problem solving, particularly their Doctor of Ministry program. They've got a great research background, but also one which will help you lead your church. So go check out Southern's D-Min program. It can be an extension of your current ministry, not a distraction. That's good copy, by the way, Southern. Hey, this is an extension of what you're doing, not a distraction. But where do you go? sbts.edu/solutions. Again, sb, as in boy, ts.edu/solutions. Link in the show note as well. Would love for you guys to support the show by supporting one of our sponsors. Go check out their D-Min program. All right, Marty,
good.
are you a people pleaser?
I think that's probably going to be a no.
That's what I figured you would say. If people can look up your history in terms of writing and blogging and all that sort of stuff. I've been following Marty's writings since 2006, somewhere in there.
Yeah, probably 4 maybe.
Yeah, it may have even been before then. And we'll just say he had a prophetic voice around certain things. So Josh, are you a people pleaser?
I mean, I'm not trying to please people, but I just tend to. I mean, they're just very well pleased with me, and so it just depends on how you define people pleasing. But yes, I do find that most people are pleased with me. Yes.
Josh is my beloved pastor, in whom I am well pleased.
Josh is feeling extra snarky today for whatever reason. I know that you two may not struggle with this, but this is a problem in ministry, and it's one that I struggled with earlier in my ministry. So I played the part a little bit. I dressed the part, I preached the part. And granted, I started ministering when I was in my mid-20s. So I was still discovering who I was. I don't even know that my frontal lobe had been fully developed yet. So all of you who I pastored when I was like 26, 27 years old, my brain was not even fully formed at that point. What were you doing calling me as a pastor? But I struggle with this early on, not so much now, but and for me, it was the drive to be respected, not necessarily liked or loved, but respected. And I pushed in that pretty hard. And I found out that people are going to think what they're going to think regardless of what you do. So, I mean, you got to try a little bit as a pastor. And certainly, you want people to be generally well received in your church. If you're not, that's a problem. But approval addiction, I think, is a very real thing. So,
Yeah.
Marty, walk me through this. You may have never struggled with this, but why do pastors especially struggle with this?
I think part of it is because we want to be pleasing to God. We've answered a call to ministry. We've answered a call to a church. And there's a certain amount of feeling like we're doing well that comes with the pat on the back or the handshake with the $50 bill in it. Or, I mean, it may be more than that now. It's like 20 when I was pastoring. But the need to be affirmed is an approval that we're doing what God wants us to do and we're succeeding at it. So if that's great sermon pastor, great message pastor, or man, you looked sharp today, pastor, all those kinds of things that people say to you can affect the way that we feel about ourselves, but it can also affect the way that we feel about our effectiveness as pastors and leaders. And I think when we start to lean on those things is when we get into trouble, because then we can't determine where we're pleasing God and where we're just pleasing people to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
Man, that's rich. That's good stuff. Josh, you've talked about being in the middle of the culture war before, where you've got people on either side who believe certain things. Politics is the kind of the go-to example. Oh, they didn't have to be politics. It could be like a local issue as well. I remember when I was at First Baptist Church Murray, and the big thing in the community was a vote to remain a dry county or to become a wet county. And I remember thinking, at least if my church was representative of the community, which it was, we had about as diverse a group as you're going to get in that community. I thought, man, this is going to be a really tight vote because, or even like remain dry. But Baptists say they believe one thing and then vote another way. So the county
You got to get that Applebee's, bro.
Yeah, I know. And I was certainly caught in the middle of all of that. And I was just kind of thinking, man, how much of a biblical issue is this? Should I preach this? Should I put the signs out in the, because there were people who were like, we want to put the signs in the churchyard. And I'm like, well, which ones? The ones that support alcohol or the ones that are against it? Because I don't know where you stand on this issue. So, a lot of times people think presidential elections and things like that with culture wars, and I can understand that. But man, it can be a local issue too. So, Josh, how have you managed that? And if you're not people pleasing or seeking approval, what do you do in that kind of scenario?
I mean, it's a valid concern. It's something that really lands with us because the line between what is a pastoral issue and what is not is very hard to determine. Everything, the kingdom of Christ extends over everything, and our morals and our ethics and the way that we live these things out. So it's very much a tough thing. I think I just start from a place where I have, not always, but semi-recently, I don't know, last especially since COVID, I'll say that, especially since COVID, have freed myself from this expectation that I'm supposed to weigh in on everything. The way that I would say it during race riots, during the COVID, during all kinds of things like that is, look, I feel as though the general population hasn't listened to what preachers have been saying every Sunday. And now all of a sudden you want to commandeer my voice for your side of things. And so I'm not going to give it to you. This voice is only for, especially in the pulpit, it's only for what the next text says. And so we've talked before about preaching schedules. This is why I'm a big advocate of just, plan it out and preach through it and don't change based on the local elections or something. Just preach the next text. So I think just start in a space where you don't have to weigh in on every issue. You don't. You just really do not have to weigh in on every issue. You particularly don't in the pulpit. You definitely do not in social media. That is not to say that if I have a member walk up to me and say, hey, how should I think through this? Or they're somehow communicating, I don't know how to think through this. Then I can have a conversation about thinking through an issue, not my opinion on an issue. But how this relates to people pleasing is if you're constantly you turn into a politician and you're constantly trying to appease the crowd you're in front of, and we're not politicians, we're preachers and pastors. And so there's a different calling there. I don't think it's the same as the Old Testament prophet, but so I guess my advice is just you don't have to speak to please the people.
So, Marty, you wrote a book on this, being in the world but not of the world. And again, link in the show notes to the disparate ones. I don't know what disparate means, but walk us through why you wrote the book and how that applies to this topic.
Yeah, so I actually included the definition right at the beginning because I was afraid people wouldn't know that it means unique. So I was thinking of the people of God as being unique in this world and not the same as this world. So I've been writing for a while. Thank you for acknowledging that early on. And I've written, I don't know, probably 1 million words on various blogs. I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than that. And so I really wanted to, at some point in my history, I don't know when this happened, I can't point to a particular thing. Maybe the missional movement really drove me to start thinking about what it meant to be in the world, but not of the world. How do we engage culture without embracing culture? What do we accept? What do we reject? What's good? What's bad? What's indifferent? And so I've been trying to think through for a long time what it means to live as Christ would have us to live in those kinds of circumstances. And so the book just covers a lot of different things. Some would seem innocuous, like food and eating. Some would be more not innocuous, like abortion. I write about my love of books, and most every pastor can appreciate that, I think. And if you're a pastor and you're really wondering if you have too many, the answer is probably no. And you can use my book to help you defend yourself if you need to do that. But I write about career. How does the idea of a career, and how does being American influence our idea of a career that might differ from what Scripture means by work and faithful working? So it's just trying to separate myself from what I've inherited, not just theologically, because that always sounds kind of weird, but how American culture has influenced my theology maybe in ways that I'd never even realized. And so working out some of those things is really what led to me writing the book.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, link in the show notes to the disparate ones. I'd encourage everyone to go pick up a copy. And, you mentioned books. I haven't done this in a while, Josh, but I'm going to give everyone a tour of my office. People often, if you're watching on YouTube, comment on the blackboard behind me. And I do like working on a blackboard, but in front of me are all of my books. And so, that's a really bad tour right there. Yeah.
But it's a good start for a library.
And then I've got a bobblehead collection up there. So,
is there a Josh King bobblehead?
Yeah, Sam has just displayed the number one reason pastors do get books is to show people. It's not to read, it's not to learn, it's to show people all the books you have, which is why I don't have any.
You're just jealous because all of your books are on your iPad.
That's right. That's right.
You
I
do
don't
everything
need anybody to see that
digitally.
or my degrees. I just pastor a church.
All right, so part of what I want to get into here is some solutions. And, your role as a pastor is to shepherd. Don't forget that. It's not to fix everyone's problems. It's not to be liked by everyone. I just had a conversation with someone, connected to our church, and, they weren't liking some things. Let me just say that. They have a point, but they weren't liking some things. And, my goal was not to get them to the point of them liking something, because honestly, it would mean us changing the direction of the church. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to happen. And they just happen to be like the only one, at least that I'm aware of, that thinks this way. So, my job there is not to appease them, because people pleasing is often tied to appeasement. And appeasement in that kind of scenario is basically lying. I'm deceiving them into thinking that, even though I can understand their point and can readily admit, yes, you have a point, but it's an either or thing. Either we're going to do something or we're not. And I can't lead them to believe that there's this option of us actually doing what they want us to do. I'm deceiving them. I don't want them to walk away thinking, oh wow, maybe there's a chance. Maybe you're telling me there's a chance, and like, no, there's not. There's not a chance. I love you. You have a point. There's not a chance. You have to be honest with people, and that's part of shepherding them. So there's this idea of having a shepherd's heart and a prophetic voice, and you've got to balance both of those things. Like, if you are always, if you are leading and it's always a prophetic voice, and we know who you are on Twitter, if that's always you, there's also the other side of things that is like the shepherd's heart. And then if you're only the shepherd's heart and you're never a prophetic voice, you're just squishy, and you're not taking a stand for anything, and people may like you, but they don't believe you. So it's a balance that's there. Josh, how do you achieve that balance in your own church?
I mean, I probably lean heavier on being less squishy. So I should probably be more squishy. But I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I'll just toss that over to Marty, because this is a really hard balance for any of us to achieve. And so in your writing and your research, what did you find that's helpful that you could help me and maybe our listeners?
Yeah, one of the things that I fell victim to, especially early on in my ministry, is like preaching to one person. I knew one person in the congregation had a thing, and I would preach it as if I was preaching to the congregation, but I'd be like kind of looking right at them out of the corner of my eye. And I realized after a while, and I was green. Sam, you mentioned being young and all that. I was not only young, I was stupid. And I realized after a while that not only is that not good, it can actually, if you're not careful, you reveal that you're revealing some stuff that that shouldn't be talked about outside of a one-to-one conversation. So I think one of the ways to avoid squishiness is to deal with people directly. Make an appointment with them, have them come in, sit down and talk to them about whatever the thing is. And that way you're not dancing around it in the pulpit, but neither are you using the pulpit to chew people out and then feel better that, yeah, I addressed that issue. No, you addressed an issue about a person. You didn't really address an issue for the church. I think the prophetic voice is often, what does the church need to do, not what does an individual in the church need to do. I would recommend, there's a book, I don't know if either of you guys have ever read it, called The Devil in Pew Number 7, written by the daughter of a pastor who was murdered by one of his congregants. It's one of the most gospel happy stories you'll ever read, but it is so brutal. And this man was in a small church, I think it was in South Carolina. This would have been in the 70s, I guess. And he was being prophetic, not mean, but there was a man in the church that really wanted to run the church, like literally run the church. And so this guy ministered, the pastor ministered, he tried to love the church, tried to love the guy, and it just did not work out. So the man wasn't squishy, he was prophetic, but he ended up dying for it. His wife died, he died, I can't remember exactly. One died, one lived. Anyway, it was a tragic story. But it's one of the books I recommend when pastors start talking about, boy, things sure are hard. I'm like, okay, you probably want to read this book and get some perspective on that particular thing. But I think that's where some of the balance is. The prophetic voice, I think, is to the church, it's to the body. This is what God wants us to do. And squishiness often comes in where we're not willing to address an individual who's causing a problem, the UODO or the Santiki in the church. We let them go rather than dealing with them. And our squishiness comes out in that, and we think we're being prophetic because we're preaching this, big sermon.
Yeah.
Is it
Sam,
Santiki or Sintiki?
I have no idea. It comes out different every time I say it.
Is it Habakkuk or Habakkuk?
just say it with confidence. Sam,
That's pretty much true.
here's one of the things that I know a lot of leaders struggle with, or that really plays into this. It's some of the stuff that we do is it's got a performative nature to it, right? I mean, preaching has that sort of element to it, or just leading a meeting. We've all been in those times where somebody compliments you and says, I mean, you just lead this so well, or normally this would cause a fight, but you're so insightful. That kind of Sam, how do you balance, or how should we think through balancing our service not being performative and the
Yeah.
way that we would walk through those?
Excellent point. I don't know that I do it well. I think maybe I do it better than I used to. I have learned that decorum is part of leadership. Now, most everyone out there would say, duh, we know that, but it took me a while to figure it out. So there are times, plenty of times, when I let my personality show. In the pulpit, in meetings, I am who I am. I'm not going to change that. I'm intense. I'm talkative. I'm an extrovert. I love awkward and weird situations. And, I don't mind, asking people pointed questions. That's just my personality. And it comes from a place of I love learning about what makes people tick, like what's really in your soul. Those, that's just what drives me. But there are times when the punchy joke or, the silliness is inappropriate. So I've had to learn that as a lead pastor, especially, I need to have a level of decorum about me. I lead a lot of invocations at the county commission and the city council. And, I know some of these leaders in the community, not like we're best buds or anything, but they'll lean on me from time to time to do stuff like that. Well, guess what? I'm going to show up looking the part, right? So if I show up in an Aerosmith t-shirt and ratty jeans, it's just a weird, like no one's going to say anything because it's Florida, but it's just weird. So there is a performative side. I want to point that out, that you should perform your sermons, right? Because it's preaching. There's an art to that, and you need to do it well. That being said, when you're serving someone, you're not performing for them. So while I polish my shoes and I match my watch straps to my outfit on Sunday mornings, I know not everyone does that, nor am I saying they have to, but
I do.
that's me. That's me. There's a part of the performance. And by the way, I love it when people point out my shoes. That's the people-pleasing side of things. When a hurricane hits, man, I'm throwing on my work clothes just like anyone else, picking up a chainsaw and going and get those trees cut. Who cares what I look like? Who cares what kind of language I'm using when the chainsaw throws a chain? Well, maybe some people do, but you get my point. You do kind of have to do both. You have to show the decorum and the performative side, and I think that's important. But then you don't need to be trying to do that when you're just at someone's bedside when they're dying. That's weird. So I think many pastors tend to lean one way or the other. They tend to be more on the performative side or more on the serving side. But you got to do both, and it's hard. It can't. There's times when you really shouldn't mix them.
Yeah. Marty, you said you've written 1,000,000 words. I know Sam is coming up on that if he's not there with you. He's writing constantly. I do good with the 140 characters that we are given, but I'm
It's
sure
more
with
than
that
that now,
many
by the way.
words out there, you've received criticism. And if we are going to live by the applause, we often die by the criticism.
Yeah.
How have you found, or how should people think through the idea of criticism is going to come, and it's not all bad poison? Some of it's
Yeah.
good medicine. How do we think through that?
I think the very first thing is what you alluded to, and that is don't do it for the applause. That's the very first thing. Um, Ministry, writing, whatever it might be, the second it turns into I'm doing it so people will think well of me, the harder it is to receive criticism because you can't receive criticism from the people that you're trying to please all the time. My problem typically is I don't even care about the criticism. I once I reach a conclusion about something, and I'm fast in that conclusion. If someone criticizes me about that conclusion, then I don't usually take it all that seriously because in my mind, I've thought about their complaint already. I've already answered what they're saying while they're still talking to me, in my head,
Mm.
formulating my response. My wife will tell you that I will argue all day long with someone that I agree with if they're making a bad argument. I just the criticism part can be tough. It can be tough for me because I just don't like to be criticized. But receiving it without internalizing it, I think, is the valid point.
Mm.
Everybody is going to receive some kind of criticism for something. If you're a sports person, if you're a pastor, if you're a writer, if you're an employee, and the key is taking that criticism and putting it at the level of effect that it needs to be. And it's rarely supposed to be at the deep emotional core of our being. It's usually got something to do with how we're acting, how we're performing a job, or something like that. And that's the level where we need to receive it. And when we've fixed it and considered it, we need to just file it away for future reference without taking it in and letting it bleed us to death.
Just recently, I was writing not like you guys, just for fun, and it was fiction. And a friend of mine was reading it, and he's like, I've got some criticisms, but I don't want to share them with you because I'm afraid you'll hate me." And I said, "Man, I don't. I have." It was this weird feeling of me saying, "I'm just doing this for fun," and the only analogy I could give was like, it's like I'm building a deck. I don't know how to do this professionally. And so if you come over and say, change this, I'll be like, all right, let's change that. So there was this click in my brain that realized whether it's my preaching or it's just the way I have a conversation, it's just like building a deck, and I'm not a professional deck builder. So if somebody comes along and says, you could do this differently, then I think that's okay because I'll just do it differently. And I've not always been great about that. I'll get all of my feels if somebody criticizes me, but it is a sign of maturity when you start to realize they're not criticizing who I am.
Hmm.
They're just criticizing the thing I did, and the thing I
Yeah,
did is open to criticism. So,
yeah,
yeah.
And the higher you go in leadership, the more criticism you should expect.
hmm,
And a lot of top leaders forget that. They think that they should receive less criticism, and the answer
Yeah.
is no. There's a higher layer of accountability. At the higher up you go, the more accountability is needed, which means that you're more prone to criticism. So,
That's right.
just a reminder for all of us who are lead pastors, we will likely be on the receiving end
hmm.
more so than some of the other staff positions, and that's by design. Want to thank Marty for being a part of today's episode.
Thank y'all.
Do us a favor. Go get his book, The Disparate Ones. It's on Amazon. It's in all the other places where you can buy books. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's a really good book. It's full of essays on being in the world, but not of the world. Marty's a phenomenal writer, so we just want to point you in the direction of good writers.
Thank you.
And Marty, we're excited to announce that we'll be doing some writing for us at Church Answers as well. So that's our win. That is our win. So be on the lookout for all of what we're doing at Church Answers. You can subscribe at churchanswers.com. If you're not a subscriber, love to have you over there. A lot of free content, including this podcast. So the way that is possible is because of our sponsors. And Josh, who has been with us forever, and who do we love?
Jesus.
Church team.
Also church teams.
Put you on the
I thought it
spot.
was going to be a squirrel.
No, oh man, that was great. That was man. That is just like
I
your
knew what
kid.
you wanted, but Jesus has actually been with us.
It's like the
forever.
kid in Sunday school who wasn't paying attention, and it's like, "Hey, Josh," you're like, "Oh, it's Jesus. Jesus is the answer." Oh man, yeah, church, yeah, and Christ-centered company. By the way, Boyd Pelly loves Jesus. He also runs a really good company, Church Teams. Go check them out. They've got all your software solutions. Go to go.churchteams.com. Again, go.churchteams.com. Schedule a call with them. If you have a problem that is software related, computer related, systems related, giving for your church, texting, phone related, they can handle it. So love what they do. They love churches. They've got great customer service. They will take care of you. Go.churchteams.com.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for listening to Rainer on Leadership. This show is made possible because of our sponsors, but also because of your support. So thank you for that. Make sure that you share the show and help us to grow the influence so that we can continue to help people with this content, with the other content we provide. We'll catch you next week.